But now, without further ado, Sébastien, you are an MVP and a Microsoft 365 architect, and you're here to tell us about how to extend Copilot and Microsoft Search with graph connectors. I'm very interested in hearing this myself. It's a relevant topic. So without further ado, please take it away.
Okay, thank you very much, Tatu. So before moving on, a quick introduction about me. I'm in France. I'm working on Microsoft 365, mostly on SharePoint topics, and there are document-related, content-related topics for almost 18 years. I'm trying to be both on console and technical sides, and usually I'm on document management system architect, and I know a lot about search engines, Microsoft Search Engine, and today, and also we have SharePoint Premium features, Syntex feature about how to extract information from document and so on. And since November, we also are all focused on what ChatGPT or Copilot will add as new features and new behaviors. And I won't talk about compliance, security, and agility today. I will focus on the graph connector. Okay, it will be I will try to be at the business level. It will be an introduction and overview, no Visual Studio. Okay, I will try to give you all the vocabulary, all the impact, licensing, and so on. So, if you want more details, don't hesitate to put a question in comments, and I will be happy to answer it. So, there are many people today connected. I'm glad about it. So I assume that mostly you are here for Copilot. And if you look at the Microsoft documentation, they explain you that you have your Copilot, which is a large language model. And this LLM will use what you have on your Microsoft 365 tenant by default. Okay, you can extend it to internet as a source of information. Be careful when you do so, because when you use the internet connection for Copilot, you're using Bing, and you don't put sensitive information in your prompts if you do something like that, because it will be sent to Bing, which is a public commercial tool, when you send it to internet, and many companies are disabling the internet connection for Copilot because of that. But if you want to index something outside of Microsoft 365, if you want to be able to interact from Copilot, from a LLM, with something outside of Microsoft 365, there are in fact two ways. You can develop a plugin, and I won't give you a lot of detail about plugins. It can be a Teams plugin, it can be a Power Platform plugin, and I will at the end explain you the difference with the graph connector. And you can use graph connectors. If you use a graph connector, the idea is to extend the knowledge for Copilot. So graph connector will be used to the LLM, to feed the LLM with information external to Microsoft 365. You will mostly use plugin if you need to have interaction from the LLM, so you can get information from external content using plugins, and you can also interact and trigger actions, for instance, using plugins. But today, I will only talk about graph connectors, those Microsoft graph connectors. And those Microsoft graph connectors are not something new. In fact, it's something that Microsoft has released in 2021. And initially, the purpose of Microsoft Graph Connector was to extend the Microsoft Search Engine capabilities to external content. So the idea here is to use exactly the same Microsoft Graph Connectors to also be able to feed Copilots, as we feed when you crawl with the search engine. We will crawl also external contents using those graph connectors. I mean, this is on another representation, but so you can maybe have a better point of view here. If you have external content and you want to only be able to feed your semantic index with this external content, use Microsoft Graph Connectors. And the semantic index will feed Copilot, and then the user will talk with Copilot and so on. If you want read-write interaction with external content, focus on plugins, and it will be the good option. So about the graph connectors in search engine, what does it look like? I would do a few demos, but I don't trust my internet connection, so I prefer to use videos. The idea, if you have a Microsoft Graph Connector, first, what's the impact on my search engine? On my search engine, I will be able to search as I search usually, and I can have results in my search request, in my search results, coming from external content. It can be a file share, it can be a website, it can be ServiceNow, Jira, Atlassian, whatever, or even a custom application. And I will give you details about that later. You can have those results in the whole results vertical, or you can have your own custom. I will give. I have the question. I will give the answer at the end. And or you can have your own custom vertical dedicated to this external source. Okay. Like and this is, for instance, here. I think we are using like. We are connected to a SQL database, and we get results, in fact, from a SQL database inside my Microsoft 365 results. So this is for the search engine. And if you look at Copilot, the idea is to be able to have answers based on content external to Microsoft 365. For instance, what you see here is an answer. Okay, create a list to compare travel expenses, travel expense process. This is the one I should follow if I'm traveling to Australia next month. And Copilot will understand that the proper source of information is maybe ServiceNow, because I already implemented a connector, a Microsoft Graph Connector to ServiceNow. And it will give me answer as it will give me answer based on Microsoft 365 content, like OneDrive content, SharePoint content, Teams content, Outlook content. But here, you see that the source is a ServiceNow item. Okay, a quick video because I haven't been able, in fact, to test the Copilot plus Microsoft Graph Connector yet. For search, I do it for quite a long time, but for Copilot, I don't have a tenant with admin permission yet to do so. But here you can see the demonstration. You can directly type your request, and it will provide you answers. So, I mean, it's only available from the prompt, the Teams prompt of Copilot. And you see that it's directly looking inside this. And here I have my answer. Okay. And for instance, here I'm looking inside the Jira database, knowledge database. Here you see. This is what typically Microsoft Graph Connector will bring you if you use a Microsoft Graph Connector with Copilot. Here, what you see here, and I won't give you more detail about that. Here you can have like an adaptive card and so on. This is what a plugin does, not a Microsoft Graph Connector. What plugin does. And so as we focus on Microsoft Graph Connector, I stick to Microsoft Graph Connector. So if you're involved in Copilot, you already know this, this schema. Every time a user send a prompt to Copilot, okay, it goes to Copilot, which send it to Microsoft Graph. And here, in fact, this is at this very step that we will have a look if we don't have also information somewhere in plugin, and plugins include Microsoft Graph connectors. Okay, and based on those results, it will be sent to the LLM and sent to Graph and so on. Note that it's a very important information. The sources of information you will use for Microsoft Graph Connector, it can be a SaaS, software as a service, something on the cloud. It can be something on-premise. And as for search results, depending on the connector and so on, but you can make that the user will only have results of, will only have Copilot answers based on the user ACL or user permissions on the third-party tool, the external tool, like, as I said, file share or whatever, Jira and so on. How it works. So a bit of vocabulary. A bit of vocabulary. Connectors. So you will implement, when we are talking about Microsoft Graph Connector, you can have one or several connectors. For instance, one connector to a website, one connector to Jira, okay, and so on and so on. And a connector will index external items, okay? Each external item, if we are talking about search engine, is a potential search results. If we are talking about a shared drive, an external item is a file. If we are talking about Jira, an external item is a support ticket. If I'm talking about website, an external item can be a web page, for instance. Okay, and for all those external items, the Graph Connector will pick the content, of course, like we do for the search engine. It will also extract the properties and the ACL, the permissions, as I said, making that when I will send a request for the search engine or for Copilot, I will only get results based on my permissions. How do I implement it when I will try to use on an already existing connector? 3 steps. First, I connect. Second, I set up, then I customize. And in fact, setup and customize are only useful if you are looking at the search engine part, benefit of Microsoft Graph Connector. If you're only here to use it with Copilot, you mostly will pay attention to connect step. And so about the connection. Connection, if we need to connect to a SaaS, a cloud service, like I said, Jira, website, internet website, or whatever, you will see I will do a demonstration after then. You will just need to provide the proper authentication method if supported by the connector. Prompt the credentials. It can be a login password. It can be a client ID and a secret, or client ID and certificate, or whatever. If your source of information is something on-premise or inside your internal network, I mean, Graph connectors are on the cloud. Okay, so we need to find a way so the Microsoft 365 Search Engine and Microsoft Copilot indexer can access those resources. And to do so, you need to have something called Graph Connector Agent. Graph Connector Agent, to use it, you need to create an enterprise Azure app, provide the proper authentication and permissions, and you need like a virtual machine, and it's just a simple exe, and you click follow, and it will install the Microsoft Graph Connector Agent. Okay, and you provide then the Azure Enterprise App credentials, and then you will be able to use it to authenticate to local resources. Okay, so quite simple to install. You will spend more time doing meetings to request having a virtual machine than to do the installation itself. Once you're connected, you will have to set it up. I will do a focus, but in fact, when we talk about setup, it's mostly about what are the properties you can, metadata, about the content you can get. Okay, if we are talking about a file on a file share, I'm talking about the file size, the file extension, file name, the path, created date, created by, modified by, modification date. If I'm talking about Jira, this is the ticket number, ticket owner, and so on. Those are the properties, okay? And as I wrote the property, and I will do a mapping. I will also talk about schema. We'll do a focus about schema just after then. And I will set up the refresh settings, okay? And once I did all those settings, I can customize my connector. And when we talk about having customization, I'm talking about setting up, do I have results inside the all vertical or in a custom vertical? And should I implement a filter? And I will customize also the layout of my results for this very graph connector. Okay. Quick focus on the schema, what name the schema. It's exactly what I just mentioned before. Here, this is on the left, the Microsoft Graph Connector Word with external item. And my external item is supposed to have an ID, a title, a description, URL, and the content. I mean, content, ID, and URL are mandatory, but you can have any properties as the one who developed the connector has imagined, okay? And based, when you will plug it to your external source, you will do mapping with the properties with the word of your external source. So if I'm plugging to a file share, there is no URL in file share, there are file path, okay? And what we call the content is the file content, so content inside the file. Question, to better understand it, is the Graph Connector used only for on-premise content or also for other web service like ServiceNow and so on? It's both of them, okay? If you use Graph Connector, you can use it for SaaS services and also for on-premise application or database or whatever. But you will need this component, Graph Connector agent, only to access on-premise resources. Okay. If you need to talk only with SaaS services, no need of Graph Connector agent. It's something you install, it's binary, you install on a virtual machine, the Graph Connector agent, to do the gateway between the cloud, Microsoft Cloud, and your on-premise services. Let's move on. Okay, I was talking about this. So we will have properties on the word of our external content, and we will have also properties, but in the Microsoft Graph Connector world. And among those properties, there are a few ones that we name semantic labels. Those are properties which are well known from Microsoft 365. Like Microsoft 365 always knows what a title is, always knows what a URL is, for instance. Okay, and the few ones you see on the left here are very important, and you need to pay close attention when you implement a connector about them, because those ones on the left are the ones used by the search engine, Microsoft search engine, to calculate the ranking of your results. Okay, so always be sure that you properly feed those properties. The one you see with a tiny Copilot logo are the ones that are especially used by Copilot, which are very basic. In fact, Copilot needs the title. It's not a property, but you need always the content, of course, the URL and the icon URL. Other parts is just information about other information, and Copilot won't care. It's just content for Copilot. For the search engine, we can do something more creative. We can have a schema. If you already use the Microsoft 365 search engine, you know that by default you have a schema. You have managed properties that you need to map with crawled properties. And for each of those managed properties, you can declare if those properties are searchable or queryable, refinable, meaning that you can implement a filter based on it. Okay. In fact, you will retrieve the same concept. There is no crawled property and managed property, but all properties you will have from your external content, you can declare them as searchable or queryable or retrievable or refinable and so on. And what you see here is an example, instance of a schema for a specific source of information. So what connectors? The question before was what kind of connector can we have? In fact, you have three different types of connectors. You have connectors provided by Microsoft. Those are names of built-in connectors. And I will do a focus after then, okay? Those connectors, you cannot change anything about it. It's provided out of the box. But there is no all connector implemented by Microsoft. And sometimes you may want to connect to something quite complex, but it's not provided by Microsoft. For instance, if you need to connect to, if you use Documentum or LiveLink, which are well-known DMS system, there is no built-in connector provided by Microsoft, but there are partners connectors for that. Okay, partners means third-party tool, which you need to pay to have access to those partner connectors. You need to pay the partner. And if you don't find what you need in the Microsoft built-in connectors or by the partner third-party tools, you can implement your own custom connector. So if we do a focus on the built-in connectors, here is the list of the data sources you can directly plug in. And you can, if you pay attention, you will see that you have Confluence Cloud and Confluence On-Premise, which is currently on Puview, but I mean, we can have so cloud sources and on-premise sources. I will provide you, I will post in the chat the slide deck, and you will have links to the documentation and so on. But here is the list, and I mean, you will have the one I used several times, file share, for instance. You will always use, often have to use it. Enterprise website, you can plug in directly to cloud website, a public website. But if you have like a WordPress on-premise site for knowledge database and so on, you can also use this enterprise website connector. You can plug directly to a CSV source or to a SQL database. It's very useful to do so. In fact, you will plug and you will provide a request, and you will get the table, the view, and every column will be a property. And maybe a quick demonstration about what it looks like. In fact, I'm sorry about that. My tenant usually planned for demonstration is done, so I need to use this one, which is in French. Sorry about that. But if you go to the Microsoft 365 Global Admin, you go in Settings, and you will see that there is a Search and Intelligence menu. You need to have, of course, I mean, if you're a global admin, you will see it. If you're not a global admin, you can delegate specific permissions to be able to have access to it. And there is two-level contributor and owner. You will have few insights, help, but the one we need here is data sources. And here you will find all the connectors available. Okay, you can click add. You will pick a source. Okay, and for instance, here I will implement a connector with a website. Click next, and let's call it Teams Nation. Yeah. Okay. Teams Nation, and you can do a quick setting, but I want to go to the advanced settings, so you will have a better view about what it looks like. And Teams Nation. Yeah, I will talk about the limit after then. I see a question in the chat. So let's index the Teams Nation site. Okay, clack, activation. Yes, we're good. And I will just provide the URL. There are a few settings. What you need to have to pay attention here, I can choose between cloud. So I mean, if I need to authenticate to a SaaS or a website, and I have several authentication methods, or agent if I have already implemented a Microsoft Graph agent. Okay, and I lost mine because it's not the the planned environment. But if you already have a Graph agent, you can have several Graph agents. By the way, you will retrieve the list here, and you will retrieve the authentication method for this connector here. So let's say it's a cloud, and we need no authentication. And it should work. Yes, success. And after then, you can declare who can access to those results, because here this is a website. There is no purpose on having permission on the website, but if this is something with specific permissions, you can set it up. Usually when you use such a connector to request something like Jira or so on, you will see that you can do a mapping between your Jira login and your Microsoft UPN. Okay, you can provide the regex to do the mapping, and if it's able to do the mapping between your login on the Microsoft 365 world and the login in the external tool world, it's okay. Usually, you have a way to implement it. It was about the permissions. Here you will retrieve information. So because this is a connector to a website, it proposed me to have information, to extract information from all HTML content. And what you see here is a list of information extracted from the meta, M-E-T-A tag present in HTML pages. And I retrieve all of them. After then, I can create my own properties based, for instance, on a regex based on the other properties previously mentioned from the meta on the HTML content. I can exclude specific URL and so on. Then here, what you see here, those are the properties as the connector, Microsoft Graph Connector for web, for enterprise website. This is the properties it expects, and those are the properties that it has been found on our website content. And I can also reuse the meta tags or the custom tags I created previously. I can also set up the schema. The schema is only useful for the search engine, no need of schema if you only look at the Copilot part. And after then, you will set up when, so UTC +1, London, yeah. And you can set it up to crawl the content every day, every week, every 2 weeks, and so on. So let's say it's every day, and I can set up when exactly it will crawl the content. And you can, depending on the connector, you can do a full crawl or an incremental crawl or an incremental crawl. Okay. Then you click save, you review everything, and you say, okay, it's good. And when you publish a connector, the first time you publish a connector, you can publish the connector, but only for few users. And you can directly type the name of those users, or you can use a security group. It's very useful when you begin to test something, to do the test only inside, for instance, the IT department. Then you click publish. It will take, and here it asks me if I want to see those results in the whole vertical. Let's say I want to do so, and I click save. It will take few minutes or few hours to do the crawl, and after then I will be able to use it inside my search results. Okay, and I already have a connector here implemented, and when I type something about the IMS community, which is a speaking community, you will see results, okay, which can be my content, internal content from Microsoft 365. And the result you see here is a result from an external website. And when I click on it, I go to directly to the external website page. So here I need to wait, okay, and it will do the job. And same thing for Copilot. I need to wait, and after then, Copilot, I will be able to interact through Copilot with those external informations. So this is about built-in connectors. You can also have external connectors. In fact, there are 3 main external connector providers: BI Insight, Rayton, and Accenture. And there is a gallery provided by Microsoft. So there is here a link. You click on this link, and you will have a tiny search engine where you can directly search a specific connector. For instance, if I need a connector to LiveLink, for instance, here you see I find a connector to LiveLink, and I need to have a contract because this is something provided by an external third-party ESV. So I need to have a contract with him to implement it. And I can also create my own custom connector. I won't do a full course about it. We don't have time to do so. But what you have to understand about that, there is Microsoft Graph SDK. In fact, initially, there is a graph indexing API, which works very well. And there is the third link is directly on Microsoft Learn, a tutorial to create your own connectors based on graph indexing API. But they also released, Microsoft also released a Microsoft Graph SDK, which is easier to manage than directly the API. And using the Microsoft Graph SDK, you can implement connector using .NET, using PHP, Java. I don't remember the exact number of languages which are supported, but you can implement them. And when you will implement your own connector, by default, Microsoft says that you need to host this code on virtual machine. And what your code will have to do is first to call web services, to call API, to declare the connector. So the definition, it's mostly JSON files, JSON flows you will send, declare the schema and so on. And after then, what your connector will do is to crawl the external content from your custom application, if you have a line of business application, get the properties, get the content, ACL, and so on, and push it to the web services. Interesting fact, there is an excellent MVP that you probably know. His name is Kevin McDonald, and he has released an implementation of a custom Microsoft Graph connector based on Logic apps. There is an excellent video where he explains everything about that, and will retrieve the link of the GitHub sources and so on. So really, if you want to know more about the custom connectors, pay attention of what Kevin has written, because it's very interesting. For the conclusion, what are the limits and what is the licensing aspect about it? So first limit, you can only have 30 graph connector per tenant. Okay, so every time I implement a connector, like a website connector and so on, it's one connector. As I said, we talk about external items. One connection can only manage by default 5 million external items. What you grab as information is limited to 500 gigabytes. And you have also a global limit on the tenant. If you do the addition of all graph connector external item indexed, you shouldn't have more than 50 million external item indexed. If those limitations are too low for your use cases, there is in fact Microsoft form you can fill to ask Microsoft to increase those limitations. I don't know how often and how long it takes to process and until where you can go in limitations. But if those limitations are too small for you, just pay attention. There is a form about that. Another limitation, very important, is the speed to crawl the content. And by default, they say that maximum they will crawl 25 items per second. It can seem a lot, but if you have millions of items to crawl, in fact, it means that it will be very long to crawl everything. And another limitation, important limitation, that it will only index 4 megabytes per external item, meaning that if we are indexing a file share, for instance, only the first 4 megabytes will be indexed per document. Okay, so this is only the first pages, for instance, of your document that will be indexed. Be careful about that. And last one, let's talk about money. So it's not free. And I mean, in France, I see that there is very few customers who implemented it. I see, based on what I see on forums and blogs and so on, that you have more people implementing it in UK, Belgium, Netherlands, Switzerland, US, and so on. But I know that in France, we have very few customers implementing it. If your tenant has E5, it can be Office E5 or Microsoft E5. Microsoft E5 license, in fact, you already have capabilities about that. I mean, it's based on the number of external items you will index. Okay, so if I try to index, for instance, an external website which contains 100 pages, I need to be able to index 100 items. And every E5 license will provide me 500 item credit. Okay, so if I have 100, if I have license 100 per 500 makes that I'm able to index 50,000 items. This is a global quota, and every connector will pick inside it. You also have the same thing with Viva Topics licenses, if we still have people using Viva Topics. And if you need more, you can buy credit. Okay, and one license, and you can have several licenses, is for 1 million item. And 1 million item, so you use pounds, but here you can find the price in euro. It's about a bit less than 1,000 euro per month to have 1 million item credit, and you can have several ones. So yes, you need to pay to be able to use those connectors. If you use a built-in connector, perfect, nothing additional. If you use a custom connector, perfect, nothing additional. If you need to use a third-party, a partner connector, you need to pay that from Microsoft, and you need also to pay your the third-party vendor.